Hi, I'd like to take just a couple minutes to tell you about the INE.com Azure Administrator Learning Path. I'm Tracy Wallace, and I am the lead instructor and content provider for this learning path. The purpose of this learning path is really twofold. One is for those wishing to take the certification exam, and you want to prepare for the AZ-103 exam to achieve your Microsoft Certified Azure Administrator Associate certification. But also beyond that, we really don't want this to be just an exam preparation course. So the idea is to really get you the knowledge you need to become an effective Azure administrator. Right. Now, the elements of the course are, of course, on-demand videos, and we cover a wide range of topics that are associated with being an Azure administrator, as well as getting through the Azure Administrator exam. There are also quiz questions that you can take to see how you're doing as far as assimilating the information, and very importantly, there are hands-on tasks. These are going to allow you to really put into practice what you're learning as you go through the videos, and they're an absolutely critical part of this course. Now, as far as the components of the learning path, of this learning path, not of the course, really we've got three different types of courses in the learning path. There's some prerequisite. If you're really just not familiar with Azure at all and you'd like to go through this path, you could start out with things like the fundamentals of Azure. There's also an exam preparation, which is really just looking at, okay, here's what the exam is, here's what you're likely to find, and really serving as a roadmap for all of the learning domain courses that are part of this learning path. And what I'd like to do now is just take a minute or two to talk about the courses that make up this learning path. And there are, in terms of learning domain courses, there are 6 different learning domain courses. I believe there's one exam preparation course, and there's a few prerequisite courses if you need them. But let's jump into the learning domains. What are we going to cover? Well, the first learning domain that we're going to cover is the resource management course, and that's where we're going to look at just managing resources in Azure, as well as securing resources and monitoring resources that you have in Azure. The next course that we've got is our network management course overview. And you can see the different areas that we cover in this rather extensive course. We're going to look at provisioning virtual networks and what are the components of it. How do we manage traffic through network security groups and routing? What are some services such as load balancing and DNS? How can we troubleshoot our networks? And how do we connect our networks both between networks, virtual networks in Azure, as well as to our on-premises environment? Okay. The next course that we have in this learning path is virtual machine management. And we'll look at the basics of virtual machine configuration. How do we provision them? How do we configure them? What are the component parts? How do we deploy virtual machines, particularly through things like templates and using custom images? And how do we scale? How do we affect the scalability and availability of our virtual machines? We also have a course on storage management in Azure, and we'll talk about the basics of storage account management. What are storage accounts? What are the options for provisioning them, for setting up replication? What are the component services? We also look at some of the services on top of storage. So you can see Storage Explorer, synchronization, CDN, and finally we look at migration of storage. What are the tools that we have that are provided by Azure to migrate data into, and in some cases out of, the Azure environment? The next course that we have is identity management. We're going to take a look at Azure AD, and we'll look at the elements that go into Azure AD itself. So we'll look at users and groups and devices. We'll talk about creating multiple Active Directory Azure AD directories or tenants, and we'll also look at how to assign custom domains and Azure MFA. There's another really big component of identity, and that is integrating with on-premises or hybrid identity. We're really going to dive in deep into hybrid identity topics. And the last, and certainly not least, course that's a content-based course for this learning path is business continuity. What are the business continuity options within Azure? How do we implement Azure Backup? And how do we manage Azure Backup? And across these content-based courses, we, again, really cover a wide spectrum of daily operational tasks that are going to be required by any Azure architect, or by any Azure administrator, excuse me. And so I hope that you will come on over to ine.com and join me for this learning path.